The cold hit Rebecca like a wall when she pushed through the hospital's automatic doors. It was the kind of cold that made your bones ache, the kind that crept through your coat no matter how thick it was. She pulled her scarf tighter around her neck and started walking. It was 2 a.m. and the streets were empty except for the occasional taxi passing by. Rebecca had just finished another 12-hour shift at the emergency room. Her feet hurt, her back hurt, and she was tired in a way that went deeper than just physical exhaustion. She'd been working these brutal hours for months now, ever since the divorce. The extra shifts kept her busy, kept her mind occupied, kept her from thinking too much about how quiet her apartment had become. Most nights, she took the bus home. It stopped right outside the hospital and dropped her off 2 blocks from her building. Simple, quick. But tonight, she couldn't bear the thought of going straight home to that empty space. So she walked instead, taking the long way through the park, even though it added 20 minutes to her journey and the temperature had dropped below freezing. The park was dark and silent. Most of the streetlights were broken, something the city kept promising to fix but never did. Rebecca knew she probably shouldn't be cutting through here alone at this hour, but she'd done it before. Besides, she was too tired to care much about the risks. What did it matter anyway? Her breath came out in white clouds as she walked along the path. The trees were bare, their branches reaching up like skeleton fingers against the night sky. Everything was covered in a thin layer of frost that glittered under what little moonlight broke through the clouds. It would have been beautiful if it wasn't so bitterly cold. That's when she heard it, a sound so faint she almost missed it. She stopped walking, holding her breath to listen better. There it was again, a cry. Weak and muffled, but definitely a cry. Rebecca's nurse instincts kicked in immediately. She spun around, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. It seemed to be coming from near one of the benches off the main path. She hurried toward it, her heart starting to pound. What she saw made her freeze in her tracks. There was a cardboard box on the ground next to the bench, and inside that box, wrapped in what looked like an old towel, was a baby. A newborn baby crying softly in the freezing night air. For a moment, Rebecca couldn't move. Her brain struggled to process what she was seeing. Who would leave a baby out here? In this weather? The temperature had to be in the low 20s. This tiny infant couldn't survive out here for long. She dropped to her knees beside the box, her hands shaking as she reached for the baby. The infant was so small, couldn't have been more than a few days old. Her little face was red from crying, and her lips had a bluish tint that made Rebecca's stomach drop. Hypothermia. The baby was already showing signs of hypothermia. Without thinking, Rebecca scooped the infant up, pulling off her own coat and wrapping it around the tiny body. The baby was cold to the touch, far too cold. Rebecca held her against her chest, trying to transfer her own body heat. The baby's cries got a little stronger, which was actually a good sign. It meant she still had the energy to cry, still had some fight in her. Rebecca looked around wildly, hoping to see someone, anyone, who might have left the baby here. Maybe a desperate mother who was watching from somewhere nearby, making sure someone found her child, but there was no one. The park was completely empty. Just Rebecca and this freezing baby in the middle of the night. She had to get the baby to a hospital. Now. Rebecca started running back the way she'd come, clutching the infant carefully against her chest. The baby was so light, felt so fragile in her arms. She could feel the tiny heartbeat, rapid and weak, fluttering like a bird's. The hospital was 15 minutes away by foot, maybe less if she ran. But 15 minutes might be too long. Rebecca's mind raced through the possibilities. The baby needed to be warmed up gradually, not too fast, or it could cause problems. She needed IV fluids, maybe oxygen. She needed to be checked for other injuries or health issues. Rebecca ran faster than she thought possible, her legs burning with the effort. She didn't care about the stares from the few people she passed. She didn't care that she'd left her purse on a bench somewhere in the park. All that mattered was getting this baby somewhere safe and warm. When she finally burst through the hospital doors, several of her co-workers looked up in shock. Rebecca never ran. Rebecca was always calm, always composed, always professional. But right now she was out of breath and wild-eyed, clutching a bundle to her chest. "I need help," she gasped. Found her in the park. Newborn. Possible hypothermia. Everything happened fast after that. Her colleagues snapped into action, taking the baby from her arms and rushing her to the pediatric unit. Rebecca followed, suddenly feeling cold herself now that she'd given up her coat. Someone wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. Someone else pressed a cup of hot coffee into her hands. The next few hours passed in a blur. Rebecca gave her statement to the police officers who showed up. She told them exactly where she'd found the baby, described the box and the towel, tried to remember if she'd seen anyone else in the park. They took notes and said they'd start an investigation immediately. The pediatrician came out after what felt like forever. The baby was going to be okay. She had mild hypothermia and was underweight, but she was stable. Another hour or two in that cold, though, and the story would have had a very different ending. Rebecca had found her just in time. Rebecca should have gone home then. Her shift was over. She'd done her part and she was exhausted beyond words. But she couldn't make herself leave. She asked if she could see the baby just for a minute, just to make sure with her own eyes that she was really okay. The nurses led her into the room where they'd set up the infant. She was in a warming bed, all pink and peaceful now. No longer that scary blue color. She was sleeping, her little chest rising and falling steadily. Someone had put a tiny hospital gown on her and a knit cap to keep her head warm. Rebecca stood there for a long time just watching her breathe. This tiny person who had been on the edge of death just hours ago. This little girl who someone had left in a park on the coldest night of the year. She reached out and gently touched the baby's hand. The infant's fingers curled around Rebecca's finger instinctively. That newborn reflex that makes every baby seem like they're holding on to you for dear life. And something shifted inside Rebecca. Something she didn't quite understand yet, but she felt it all the same. A pull, a connection. One of the nurses came in and smiled at her. "She's a fighter, this one," she said. "Thanks to you." Rebecca nodded but couldn't find words. She knew she should leave, should go home and get some sleep. But she also knew somehow that walking away from this baby was going to be harder than she'd thought. That finding her in that park had changed something, though she didn't yet know what or how much. She finally left as the sun was starting to come up, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The cold wasn't quite as bitter anymore, or maybe she just didn't notice it the same way. All she could think about was that little girl, alone in her warming bed with no one to hold her or tell her she was safe now. Rebecca would come back later, she decided, just to check on her, just to make sure she was still doing okay. What harm could one more visit do? She had no idea that this decision, this simple choice to come back and check on a baby she'd saved, was about to change the entire course of her life. Rebecca told herself she'd only stop by for 5 minutes. Just a quick peek to see how the baby was doing, then she'd go home and get some proper sleep. But 5 minutes turned into 30 and 30 turned into an hour. She couldn't seem to pull herself away from that warming bed where the tiny girl slept peacefully. Completely unaware of the drama surrounding her existence, the hospital had named her Hope. It seemed appropriate, one of the nurses said. She was found, she survived, and now she had hope for a future. The name stuck even though it was just temporary until someone claimed her, or the state assigned her something official. Days passed, then a week, then 2 weeks. Nobody came forward. The police investigation had turned up nothing. No missing person reports, no frantic mothers searching for a lost baby, no leads at all. It was like hope had appeared out of thin air, left in that box by a ghost. Rebecca found herself stopping by the pediatric ward every single day. At first, she told herself it was just curiosity, just a natural concern for a baby she'd saved. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. There was something about this child that had gotten under her skin, into her heart in a way she didn't quite understand. The other nurses noticed, of course. They'd smile knowingly when Rebecca showed up, still in her coat, heading straight for Hope's room before even clocking in for her shift. They'd see her during her lunch breaks, bottle feeding the baby or just sitting beside the crib, watching her sleep. "You're getting attached," her friend Linda warned her one afternoon. Linda had been a nurse for 20 years and had seen it all. "I know that look, Rebecca. You need to be careful." Rebecca laughed it off, but Linda's words stayed with her. Was she getting too attached? Probably. But what was she supposed to do? Hope had no one else. The foster care system was overloaded, and the baby was still technically in hospital custody while the investigation continued. Someone had to care about her, had to make sure she knew she wasn't alone in this world. The divorce had been final for 8 months now. Thomas had told her she was married to her job. that she cared more about her patients than she'd ever cared about him. Maybe he was right. Maybe she had thrown herself into work to avoid dealing with the problems in their marriage. But standing here, holding this baby, feeling the weight of her in her arms, Rebecca felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose, connection, love. It was terrifying. One evening, after her shift ended, Rebecca found herself talking to Dr. Chen, the pediatrician who'd been overseeing Hope's care. He was a kind man, probably in his 60s, with gray hair and glasses that always seemed to be sliding down his nose. "She's healthy now," he said, reviewing Hope's chart. "Fully recovered from the hypothermia. Normal weight gain. All her tests came back fine. Physically, she's a perfectly healthy baby girl." "That's wonderful," Rebecca said, and meant it. But there was a heaviness in her chest. If Hope was healthy, that meant she'd be transferred to foster care soon. Dr. Chen looked at her over his glasses. "I've noticed you spend a lot of time with her." Rebecca felt her cheeks flush. "I just want to make sure she's okay. Since I found her and all." Dr. Chen didn't look convinced. "Have you ever thought about becoming a foster parent?" The question caught Rebecca completely off guard. "What? No, I've never really thought about it." "Might be something to consider," Dr. Chen said gently. "The system is overwhelmed. Good foster parents are always needed. And you clearly have a bond with this little one." That conversation haunted Rebecca for days. Foster parent? Her? She'd never even had kids with Thomas, despite years of trying. He'd eventually gotten tested and found out he had fertility issues, which had just been another point of tension in their failing marriage. Rebecca had mourned the children she thought she'd never have, and eventually, she'd made peace with it. Or so she thought. But now, holding Hope, feeding her, singing to her in the quiet moments, Rebecca felt something awakening inside her. A maternal instinct she'd buried so deep, she'd convinced herself it wasn't there anymore. She started researching foster care licensing that very night. The requirements seemed daunting. Background checks, home inspections, training classes, references, financial statements. It would take months to get approved, and there was no guarantee Hope would even be placed with her. The baby might be assigned to another foster family long before Rebecca finished the process, but something told her to try anyway. Rebecca signed up for the foster parent training classes. They met twice a week for 8 weeks, covering everything from trauma-informed care to managing behavioral issues to understanding the legal system. She was one of the oldest people in the class. Most of the other prospective foster parents were young couples looking to adopt, or empty nesters whose own kids had grown up. "What made you decide to do this?" one of the instructors asked during an icebreaker session. Rebecca thought about lying, about giving some generic answer about wanting to help children in need. But the truth came out instead. "I found a baby," she said quietly, "in a park in the middle of winter. She almost died, and I can't stop thinking about her. Can't stop wanting to make sure she's safe and loved and has everything she needs." The room was silent for a moment. Then the instructor smiled. "That's one of the most honest answers I've heard. Welcome to foster care." The classes were eye-opening. Rebecca learned about the realities of the foster system, the trauma that many children carried, the complexities of working with biological families, the heartbreak of reunification or adoption falling through. It was nothing like she'd imagined. It was harder, messier, more complicated, but she kept going to see Hope every day, and every day, she felt more certain this was what she was meant to do. 3 months after finding Hope in the park, Rebecca's home study was approved. Her apartment was deemed suitable, her background check came back clean, and her references spoke highly of her. She was officially a licensed foster parent. The social worker told her she'd be added to the placement list and would likely get a call within a few weeks. "I was hoping," Rebecca said carefully, "that I might be able to foster Hope, the baby I found." The social worker, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, flipped through some papers. "The infant from the park case? She's still in hospital custody?" "Yes, but Dr. Chen said she's ready to be discharged whenever a placement is found." Patricia studied Rebecca for a long moment. "You understand that in most cases we try not to place children with people who have a prior connection to the case. It can complicate things if the biological family is found." "I understand," Rebecca said, even though her heart was sinking. "I just thought, since she doesn't have anyone else right now, and I'm already bonded with her, let me see what I can do." Patricia said, which wasn't a promise but wasn't a no either. 2 weeks later, Rebecca got the call. Hope had been officially placed in her care as a foster child. Rebecca could pick her up from the hospital the following day. She barely slept that night. She'd already bought a crib, bottles, diapers, clothes, everything a baby could possibly need. Her small apartment looked different now, filled with baby things, ready to become a home for two instead of one. When she arrived at the hospital the next morning, Hope was waiting in her carrier, dressed in a little pink outfit that one of the nurses had donated. Dr. Chen was there, and so were several of the nurses who'd been caring for Hope over the past months. "You take good care of our girl," Linda said, hugging Rebecca tightly. There were tears in her eyes, and Rebecca realized there were tears in her own too. Driving home with Hope in the back seat was surreal. Every bump in the road made Rebecca nervous. Every cry from the carrier made her want to pull over and check on her. This was real. This was actually happening. She was responsible for this tiny human now. The first night was chaos. Hope cried every 2 hours, needed to be fed, changed, comforted. Rebecca stumbled through it in a sleep-deprived haze, second-guessing every decision. Was she holding her right? Was the formula the right temperature? Why was she crying? Was something wrong? But somewhere around 3 in the morning, when Hope finally settled down in Rebecca's arms and looked up at her with those big, trusting eyes, something clicked into place. This was where she was supposed to be. This was what she was supposed to be doing. All the years of feeling like something was missing, like her life was incomplete, suddenly made sense. She wasn't just taking care of a foster child. She was building a family.
Her family.
The one she'd thought she'd never have. Of course, Rebecca knew it wasn't that simple. Hope was in foster care, not adopted. There was still a chance a biological family member could come forward. There was still a chance Hope could be taken away and placed with relatives or moved to another home. Foster care meant temporary, even though Rebecca's heart was already all in. She tried not to think about that possibility. She focused on the present, on each day with Hope, on learning to be the mother this little girl needed. It was the hardest thing Rebecca had ever done, but also the most rewarding. Her co-workers noticed the change in her. She smiled more, talked about Hope constantly, showed pictures to anyone who'd look. The dark cloud that had been hanging over her since the divorce seemed to have lifted. She'd found purpose again, found joy again, found a reason to come home at night. Linda cornered her in the break room one afternoon. "You know this might not be permanent, right? You need to protect your heart." "I know," Rebecca said, but she also knew it was too late for that. Her heart was already completely, hopelessly committed to this child. Whatever happened next, there was no going back from this. Hope had changed everything. Rebecca had been living in a beautiful bubble for 4 months. 4 months of late-night feedings and first smiles and the pure joy of watching Hope grow. The baby was thriving now, her cheeks round and pink, her eyes bright with curiosity. She'd started sleeping through the night, which made Rebecca feel like a functional human being again. But that bubble was about to burst. Patricia called on a Tuesday morning, just as Rebecca was getting ready for work. Hope was in her bouncer, cooing happily at the mobile above her head. Rebecca answered the phone with a smile, expecting a routine check-in. "We need to talk," Patricia said, and Rebecca's smile disappeared. Those 4 words never meant anything good. "What's wrong?" Rebecca's hand instinctively went to Hope, needing to touch her, to make sure she was still there. "The police found Hope's biological mother," Patricia said. "Her name is Christina. She's 19 years old and she wants her daughter back." The world tilted sideways. Rebecca sat down hard on the couch, her legs suddenly unable to hold her weight. "What?" Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. "I know this is difficult to hear, but you knew this was a possibility when you agreed to foster Hope. Reunification with biological family is always the goal." Rebecca's mind was racing. 4 months. She'd had hope for 4 months. 4 months of being a mother, of falling completely in love with this child, of building a life around her. And now someone was going to take her away? "Where has she been?" Rebecca heard herself ask. "Why did she leave Hope in that park to die?" "I can't share all the details due to privacy laws," Patricia said. "But I can tell you that Christina was homeless at the time. She gave birth alone, panicked, and made a terrible decision. She's been located now and wants to begin the reunification process." Reunification. The word felt like a knife in Rebecca's chest. When? She managed to ask. There'll be a court hearing in 2 weeks. Christina will need to prove she can provide a stable environment. She'll have to complete parenting classes, maintain housing, submit to regular drug tests. It's a process, Rebecca. Nothing happens overnight. But it felt like everything was happening too fast. Rebecca looked at Hope, who was still playing happily, completely unaware that her whole world might be about to change again. After she hung up with Patricia, Rebecca called in sick to work. She couldn't imagine going to the hospital and pretending everything was normal. She spent the day holding Hope, memorizing every detail of her face, every sound she made, every expression. What if this was all the time she had left? The next 2 weeks were torture. Rebecca went through the motions of daily life, but she felt like she was drowning. She fed Hope, changed her, played with her, but every moment was tinged with the fear that it might be one of their last together. Linda came over one evening and found Rebecca crying while Hope slept in her crib. "I can't do this," Rebecca sobbed. "I can't give her up. She's mine. I'm her mother." Linda held her while she cried. "I know, honey, I know. But you're not her mother legally. You're her foster mother, and that means putting her needs first even when it destroys you. What if Christina can't take care of her? What if she abandons her again? Then the system will intervene," Linda said. "But you have to let the process play out. You have to give her a chance." Rebecca knew Linda was right, but it didn't make it any easier. The court hearing was held on a cold morning that reminded Rebecca too much of the night she'd found Hope. She dressed the baby in a pretty dress, did her hair, made sure she looked perfect. Then she sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, waiting to be called in, feeling like she might throw up. That's when she saw Christina for the first time. She was young, painfully young, with long dark hair and eyes that looked too old for her face. She was thin, wearing clothes that looked like they'd been donated. She stood with a court-appointed attorney looking terrified. Their eyes met across the hallway. Christina's gaze immediately went to Hope in Rebecca's arms and her face crumpled. She started crying right there in the courthouse hallway, covering her mouth with her hand like she was trying to hold back a sob. Rebecca felt something twist inside her. This wasn't the monster she'd built up in her mind. This was a scared kid who'd made a horrible mistake. Inside the courtroom, Rebecca had to sit and listen while the details of Hope's abandonment were read aloud. How Christina had been living in her car. How she'd gone into labor alone and terrified, too scared to go to a hospital because she had no insurance and no money. How she'd given birth in the backseat of her car and then panicked, convinced she couldn't take care of a baby when she could barely take care of herself. So she'd left her in the park, telling herself that someone would find the baby and give her a better life than Christina could ever provide. "I know what I did was wrong," Christina said when the judge asked her to speak. Her voice was shaking. "I know I don't deserve to be forgiven, but I've been trying so hard to get my life together. I have an apartment now and a job. I've been taking parenting classes. I just want a chance to be her mother. I think about her every single day. I dream about her every night, please." The judge reviewed the case file, his face unreadable. Christina had indeed completed parenting classes. She'd maintained steady employment at a fast food restaurant for 3 months. She had a small studio apartment in a rough neighborhood, but it was clean and safe according to the inspection report. She'd passed all her drug tests. "This court's primary concern is always the best interest of the child," the judge said. "Ms. Christina has made significant progress in stabilizing her life. However, abandoning an infant in freezing temperatures is an extremely serious matter. I'm not comfortable with immediate reunification." Rebecca felt a small spark of hope, immediately followed by guilt. Why was she hoping for Christina to fail? This was a young woman who was clearly trying to turn her life around. The judge continued, "I'm ordering a graduated reunification plan. Christina will begin with supervised visits, 2 hours twice a week. If those visits go well and she continues to maintain stability, we'll increase the visitation time. Ms. Rebecca, Hope will remain in your custody during this process. We'll reconvene in 3 months to assess progress." 3 months. Rebecca had 3 more months, maybe more if things didn't go well. It should have felt like a victory, but it just felt like a temporary stay of execution. The first supervised visit happened 3 days later at the Department of Children and Families office. Rebecca brought Hope in her carrier, along with bottles and diapers and everything the baby might need. Christina was already there, sitting in a small room with a social worker. her hands clasped tightly in her lap. When Rebecca walked in with Hope, Christina's face lit up with joy and pain all mixed together. "Can I hold her?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Rebecca's arms didn't want to let go. Every instinct in her body screamed to hold on to Hope, to run out of that building and never come back. But she forced herself to gently place the baby in Christina's arms. Christina held Hope like she was made of glass, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, baby girl," she whispered. "Hi, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Hope, being a baby, had no idea what was happening. She just looked up at Christina with mild curiosity, then yawned. Rebecca sat in a chair across the room, watching. The social worker sat nearby, taking notes. The whole thing felt surreal and awful and heartbreaking. "She's so beautiful," Christina said, looking at Rebecca. "Thank you for taking care of her. Thank you for saving her." Rebecca didn't know what to say. "She's a good baby," she finally managed. They sat in awkward silence for a moment. Then Christina started talking, telling Hope about her day, her job, her tiny apartment. She was trying so hard, Rebecca could see that. Trying to be a mother to a baby she didn't know. Trying to build a connection that had been severed the moment she'd placed her in that cardboard box. The 2 hours felt like both an eternity and no time at all. When the social worker said the visit was over, Christina reluctantly handed Hope back to Rebecca. "Will you bring her back?" she asked. "On Thursday?" "Of course," Rebecca said. Outside in the parking lot, Rebecca sat in her car for a long time before driving away, just holding Hope and crying. This wasn't sustainable. She couldn't keep doing this twice a week. Couldn't keep handing over the baby she loved to someone else. Couldn't keep living in this limbo where she didn't know if she'd have Hope next month or next year. That night, Linda came over again. She'd been checking on Rebecca constantly, worried about her mental state. "I don't know if I can do this," Rebecca admitted. "Maybe I should ask to have Hope move to a different foster home. Let someone else handle the reunification process. It's killing me. Is that what's best for Hope?" Linda asked quietly. Rebecca looked at the baby sleeping peacefully in her crib. Hope had already been through so much upheaval in her short life. Being moved to yet another home, having to bond with yet another caregiver, would that really be better? "No," Rebecca admitted. "But I don't know how to do this without falling apart." "You do it one day at a time," Linda said. "You focus on being the best foster mother you can be. You support the reunification process because that's what the system requires. And you hope for the best while preparing for the worst." The visits continued. Twice a week, every week, Rebecca brought Hope to see Christina. And slowly, reluctantly, Rebecca started to see things differently. She saw how Christina's face lit up every time she held Hope. She saw how the young woman had memorized every detail of the baby's face, how she counted her tiny fingers and toes like they were precious treasures. She saw Christina practicing with bottles, learning how to change diapers, reading parenting books that she'd checked out from the library. Christina wasn't a monster. She was a young woman who'd been dealt a terrible hand in life and had made a desperate choice in a moment of crisis. And now she was trying, really trying to make things right. But that didn't make it any easier for Rebecca to imagine giving up Hope. The breakthrough happened during the 6th visit, almost by accident. Christina was holding Hope, bouncing her gently while singing a lullaby. The baby had just spit up all over Christina's shirt, and the young woman was trying to clean it up with baby wipes while also keeping Hope from crying. "Here," Rebecca said, handing her a burp cloth. "Put this over your shoulder next time before you burp her. It'll save your clothes." Christina took it gratefully. "Thanks. I should have thought of that." She paused. "There's so much I don't know. I keep reading these books, but it's different when it's real, you know?" Rebecca did know. She remembered her first weeks with Hope, how terrified she'd been, how sure she was that she was doing everything wrong. "Can I ask you something?" Christina said hesitantly. "How do you get her to sleep through the night? The books give all this advice, but I don't know what actually works." And just like that, they started talking. Really talking. Not just awkward pleasantries while the social worker watched. Rebecca found herself giving Christina tips about feeding schedules and sleep routines, about the particular way Hope liked to be rocked when she was fussy, about how she hated getting her diaper changed but loved bath time. Christina soaked up every piece of information like she was dying of thirst. She took notes on her phone, asked follow-up questions, wanted to know every detail about Hope's daily routine. By the end of that visit, something had shifted between them. They weren't exactly friends, but they weren't adversaries either. They were two women who both loved the same baby, trying to figure out how to navigate an impossible situation. After that, the visits felt different. Christina started asking Rebecca questions before she even picked up Hope. What had the baby eaten that day? Had she napped well? Was she getting over that little cold she'd had? And Rebecca found herself volunteering information, wanting Christina to succeed, wanting her to be prepared. One evening, after a particularly good visit, Christina walked Rebecca out to her car. Hope was asleep in her carrier, exhausted from all the attention. "Can I ask you something personal?" Christina said, hugging her arms around herself against the cold. Rebecca nodded, bracing herself. "Why are you being so nice to me?" Christina's voice cracked. "I left my baby in a park to die and you saved her. You should hate me. But instead you're helping me. I don't understand." Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, looking at Hope's sleeping face. "I did hate you," she admitted. "At first. I couldn't understand how anyone could do what you did. But then I met you and I saw how young you are and I heard your story. And I realized you're not evil. You were just desperate and scared and alone." Christina wiped tears from her face. "I was so scared," she whispered. "I kept thinking about how my own mother kicked me out when I told her I was pregnant. How I had nowhere to go and no one to help me. When Hope was born, I just kept thinking she deserved better than me. Better than a mother who couldn't even keep a roof over her own head." "But you're not that person anymore," Rebecca said. "You're working. You have an apartment. You're taking classes and doing everything right. Thanks to you," Christina said. "If you hadn't found her that night, I'd have lost her forever. I'd have had to live the rest of my life knowing I'd let my baby die because I was too scared to ask for help. You gave me a second chance. You gave her a second chance." They stood in the parking lot as the sun set, both women crying now, both understanding that they were connected in a way that went beyond the legal system or foster care. "I need to tell you something," Rebecca said, the words coming out before she could stop them. "I love her. I know she's not mine. I know I'm just the foster mother. But I love her like she's my own, and the thought of losing her is destroying me." Christina looked shocked. Then her face crumpled again. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I'm so grateful for what you've done, but she's my daughter. I have to try to be her mother." "I know," Rebecca said. "I know you do. And you should. I just needed you to know that giving her up is going to break my heart. Not because I don't think you can do this, but because I love her so much." They stood there in the parking lot, two broken women sharing a moment of painful honesty. The next morning, Rebecca woke up with a crazy idea. It was probably stupid, probably impossible, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. She called Patricia. "What if," Rebecca said slowly, "instead of fighting about who gets to be Hope's mother, what if we work together?" "What do you mean?" Patricia sounded confused. "Christina needs help. She's 19 years old, working minimum wage, living in a tiny apartment, trying to figure out how to be a parent with no support system. What if, instead of just doing these supervised visits twice a week, I helped her? Really helped her. Taught her everything I know about taking care of Hope. Helped her get better job training. Helped her build a life that's stable enough for full custody." There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. "Rebecca, that's very generous, but it's also highly unusual. You're the foster parent. She's the biological mother. The system doesn't usually work that way." "The system is broken," Rebecca said flatly. "We all know it. Kids bounce around from home to home. Parents get minimal support and everyone loses. What if we tried something different? You understand that if you help Christina succeed, you'll be helping her take Hope away from you?" "Yes," Rebecca said, even though the thought made her want to scream. "But maybe that's not the only way this ends. Maybe if I help Christina, she'll let me stay in Hope's life. Maybe we can create some kind of family that doesn't look like a traditional family but works for all of us." Patricia was quiet again. "Let me talk to Christina," she finally said. "See if she's open to this. But Rebecca, you need to be very careful with your heart here. This could blow up in your face." Rebecca already knew that. But she also knew she had to try. The meeting happened at a coffee shop, neutral territory. Just Rebecca, Christina, and Patricia. No lawyers, no courtroom, just three women trying to figure out what was best for one little girl. Rebecca laid out her proposal. She would help Christina with job training, help her find better housing, teach her everything about caring for Hope. In exchange, Christina would agree to let Rebecca remain in Hope's life, even after reunification. Not as a foster mother anymore, but as something, a godmother maybe, a family friend, someone who could still be part of Hope's world. Christina listened, her face unreadable. When Rebecca finished talking, she just sat there, stirring her coffee. "Why would you do this?" Christina finally asked. "What's in it for you?" "Honestly," Rebecca took a deep breath. "I get to keep loving Hope. I get to watch her grow up. I get to be part of her life instead of just walking away and never seeing her again. And you get help becoming the mother you want to be. Hope gets the best of both of us. But you'll still lose her," Christina said. "She won't be living with you anymore." "I know." Rebecca's voice was barely steady. "But I've been thinking about what's best for Hope, not what's easiest for me. And what's best is having a mother who's confident and capable and has support. You're her mother. I can't change that, and I don't want to anymore. But I can help you be the best mother possible." Christina's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve this. I don't deserve your help after what I did." "Maybe not," Rebecca said. "But Hope deserves a mother who's set up for success. And if I can help make that happen, I have to try." Patricia spoke up then. "This would be completely voluntary on both sides. No court orders, no legal requirements. Just an agreement between two adults who both want what's best for Hope. If either of you wants out at any point, you can walk away." Christina looked at Rebecca for a long time. "You'd really do this? Help me knowing it means losing Hope?" "I'm already losing her," Rebecca said. "The court is going to reunify you eventually. This way, at least I get to be part of the process instead of just watching from the sidelines. And this way you don't have to do it alone." Christina nodded slowly. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, let's try." They shook hands across the table, sealing an agreement that no one had ever tried before, at least not in Patricia's 20 years of social work. The next few months were intense. Rebecca cut her hours at the hospital to part-time so she could spend more time with Christina and Hope. She helped Christina enroll in a medical assistant training program at the community college. She went with her to tour better apartments in safer neighborhoods. She taught her how to budget on a tight income, how to meal prep, how to handle the exhaustion of working and going to school and taking care of a baby. The supervised visits gradually became longer. 2 hours became 4. 4 became whole afternoons. Then overnight visits with Rebecca on call by phone in case Christina needed help. It was hard. So much harder than Rebecca had imagined. Every time she handed Hope over for a visit, her heart broke a little more. Every milestone Christina celebrated felt like something Rebecca was losing. Hope's first tooth came in during one of Christina's visits. She said "Mama" for the first time while at Christina's apartment. But Rebecca also saw something beautiful happening. She saw Christina transform from a scared teenager into a confident young mother. She saw the bond between Christina and Hope growing stronger. She saw Hope respond to Christina with love and trust. And slowly, painfully, Rebecca started to accept that her role in Hope's life was changing. She wasn't going to be the primary mother anymore. But she could be something else, something important. The 3-month court review came and went. The judge was impressed with Christina's progress and extended the visitation schedule. 6 months in, Christina was given overnight visits every weekend. 9 months in, she was given week-long visits. Rebecca's apartment felt empty during those weeks. She'd go to work, come home to silence, and cry herself to sleep in the room that had been Hope's nursery. But then Christina would bring Hope back, and she'd get a few more days of motherhood before the cycle started again. 1 year after that first meeting in the coffee shop, Patricia called them both in for a meeting. "The judge is ready to approve full reunification," she said. "Christina, you've exceeded every requirement. You've maintained stable housing and employment. You've completed all your classes. You've proven yourself as a capable mother. Hope will be returned to your full custody." This was it, the moment Rebecca had been dreading for a year. Christina looked at Rebecca, tears in her eyes. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said. "You gave me so much more than just help. You believed in me when no one else did." Rebecca couldn't speak. She just nodded, fighting back tears. But Christina wasn't finished. "I want you to be Hope's godmother. Officially. I want her to know who you are, what you did for her. I want her to grow up knowing that she has 2 women who love her more than anything." And just like that, Rebecca's sacrifice became something else entirely. Not a loss, but a transformation. She hadn't lost a daughter. She'd gained a family. The day Christina and Hope moved into their new apartment felt like both an ending and a beginning. Rebecca helped them carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs, her back aching but her heart somehow lighter than it had been in months. This apartment was bigger than Christina's studio, in a better neighborhood with good schools nearby. Christina had saved up for months to afford the deposit, working double shifts and putting every spare dollar away. "Put the crib over there," Christina directed, pointing to the corner of the small bedroom. Hope was playing on a blanket on the floor, babbling happily to herself, completely unaware of the significance of the day. They spent hours unpacking, assembling furniture, organizing tiny clothes and toys. By the time they finished, the apartment actually looked like a home. A modest home, sure, but a real one. Christina stood in the middle of the living room, looking around with tears in her eyes. "I can't believe this is real," she whispered. "A year ago I was living in my car. Now I have an apartment, a good job, and my daughter back." "You did this," Rebecca said firmly. "You worked so hard for this." "We did this," Christina corrected. "I couldn't have done any of it without you." That night, Rebecca went home alone for the first time in over a year. Hope wouldn't be coming back. This was it. The foster placement was officially over. Hope was back with her biological mother, exactly as the system intended. Rebecca's apartment felt impossibly empty. She walked past the nursery, now stripped of all its baby things, and felt the weight of loss settle over her like a heavy blanket. She'd known this day was coming. She'd prepared for it, helped make it happen even, but knowing didn't make it hurt any less. She called Linda, who came over with wine and chocolate and let Rebecca cry for 2 hours straight. "I know you did the right thing," Rebecca sobbed. "I know this is what's best for Hope, but it hurts so much. I miss her so much already." "Of course you do," Linda said, holding her. "You're her mother too, in all the ways that matter. Loving her doesn't stop just because the legal paperwork changed." Rebecca saw Hope 3 times that first week, unable to stay away for long. She'd bring groceries for Christina, offer to babysit so Christina could study, make excuses to visit. Christina never complained, seemed to understand that Rebecca needed time to adjust to this new normal. But after that first week, Rebecca forced herself to pull back. She couldn't keep showing up every day. Christina needed space to build her life with Hope, and Rebecca needed to figure out who she was without a baby to care for every day. She picked up more shifts at the hospital, threw herself back into work the way she had after the divorce. But something was different this time. She wasn't using work to avoid pain. She was using it to channel her energy into something productive while she figured out her next step. One evening, about a month after the reunification, Rebecca was restocking supplies in the pediatric ward when Dr. Chen found her. "I heard about Hope," he said gently. "How are you holding up?" Rebecca shrugged. "Some days are better than others." It was the right thing to do, but that doesn't make it easy. "No, it doesn't," Dr. Chen agreed. "But what you did, helping that young mother instead of fighting her, that was extraordinary. Have you thought about staying in foster care? There are so many other children who need what you gave to Hope." The truth was, Rebecca had been thinking about it constantly. The foster care training hadn't expired. Her license was still active. She could take another placement, open her home to another child who needed safety and love and stability. But was she ready? Could she go through this again, knowing how much it hurt to let go? "I don't know," she admitted to Dr. Chen. "Part of me wants to, but part of me is terrified of loving another child and losing them too." "That's the risk of foster care," Dr. Chen said. "But it's also the beauty of it. You love them completely while they're with you, and then you have to trust that the love you gave them will stay with them wherever they go." His words stayed with Rebecca for days. She thought about Hope, about those precious months when the baby had been hers to care for. Yes, letting go had been devastating, but would she trade those months away to avoid the pain? Never. Not for anything. 2 weeks later, Rebecca called Patricia and asked to be put back on the active placement list. "Are you sure?" Patricia asked. "It's only been 6 weeks since Hope left. Most foster parents take longer to recover from a difficult placement." "I'm sure," Rebecca said. "There are kids out there who need help. I can't let my fear stop me from helping them." The call came 3 days later. A 5-year-old boy named Tyler had been removed from his home due to neglect. He was scared, angry, and didn't trust adults. He needed an experienced foster parent who could handle behavioral issues. Rebecca said yes. Tyler arrived with a small backpack containing everything he owned, a scowl on his face and walls up so high Rebecca could practically see them. The first night he refused to eat dinner, refused to take a bath, refused to talk. He just sat on the couch, arms crossed, glaring at everything. Rebecca didn't push. She just sat with him, read a book, let him be angry. Eventually he fell asleep on the couch and she gently carried him to the bedroom, tucking him in while he barely stirred. The first week was rough. Tyler threw tantrums, broke a lamp, screamed that he hated her and wanted to go home. Rebecca stayed calm, set boundaries, showed him that she wasn't going anywhere no matter how hard he pushed. By the second week, Tyler started testing her in different ways. He'd sneak food and hide it in his room, convinced he wouldn't be fed. He'd watch her carefully, waiting for her to get angry or mean like the adults he'd known before. But Rebecca just kept showing up, kept being patient, kept loving him even when he made it difficult. One evening, about a month into the placement, Tyler finally broke. He'd had a nightmare and woke up screaming. Rebecca rushed to his room and found him crying, his tough kid facade completely shattered. "I want my mom," he sobbed. "I know she didn't take good care of me, but she's my mom and I miss her." Rebecca held him while he cried, her heart breaking for this little boy who'd been through so much. "I know you do," she said softly. "It's okay to miss her. It's okay to love her even if she made mistakes. My caseworker says I might not get to go back home," Tyler hiccuped. "She says I might have to stay in foster care forever." "I don't know what's going to happen," Rebecca said honestly. "But I promise that while you're here, you're safe and loved and you'll always have enough to eat. Can that be enough for right now?" Tyler nodded against her shoulder. And from that night on, something shifted. He started trusting her little by little. Started talking more, smiling more, acting like the 5-year-old kid he was supposed to be instead of the hardened survivor he'd been forced to become. Rebecca shared stories about Tyler with Christina during their weekly visits. Yes, they still saw each other regularly. Rebecca would come over for dinner, play with Hope, help Christina study for exams. They'd become friends, these two women bound together by the love of one little girl. "I think I meant to do this," Rebecca told Christina one evening while Hope played with blocks on the floor. "Take care of kids who need temporary homes. Love them while they need me, then let them go when it's time." "That takes a special kind of strength," Christina said. "I don't know if I could do it." "You already did," Rebecca pointed out. "You let me take care of Hope when you couldn't. You trusted me with your most precious person." "That took incredible strength," Christina smiled. "I guess we both learned how to be strong, didn't we?" Over the next 2 years, Rebecca fostered 6 more children. Some stayed for weeks, some for months. Some went back to their biological families, some were adopted by relatives. One was adopted by Rebecca's friends from church. Each placement broke her heart a little when it ended, but each one also filled her with purpose and meaning.